All right, it is time to assemble a dual Twistsaber. This is the only blade assembly that's going to require some glue. And what I usually do is when we put these two together, these fit together with that pentagon geometry here. So these plug into each other. And then I'm going to dab a little bit of hot glue in the center and drop a piece of filament in there to lock them together. They need to be locked together for them to function correctly. But as we go about this, we have to do as much assembly as we can before we actually pin those together. So we'll start off in a pretty normal way, just by installing them into the carrier. As always, it's important to fit check all of our pieces. These two carrier pieces lock in together like this, and it should be pretty flush and it should be pretty stiff in terms of these things rotating together, because the rotation that happens on one side needs to transfer all the way through this connection and into the other side. So that feels pretty good. That looks pretty good. And then we can fit check our grips to our ring gear. And that feels pretty solid as well, so that's good too. We're going to start with the side with the actual gear at the bottom and with the pins at the bottom of the carrier. So we'll line up the seams and get this lined up, put that in there, and then we'll put the gears on the bottom. I already trim the inside of these gears down so that I know they will rotate on the posts. And we set them in. And we'll push the blade back up to lock everything together. And take the other side, extend this out a little bit, and we'll slide these two pieces together. All right, we're going to slide the ring gear on, and this can be a little bit tricky because there is an extra ledge down here that a lot of times we'll have to shave down a little bit to make sure it actually fits onto there. So it's getting hung up on that ledge. We don't want it to get hung up right here. We only want it to get hung up on this little ledge here. So the tolerances are pretty tight, so we're going to have to shave that down a little bit. And again, I'm going to shave down the side. There's a side with these crescent cuts out of it. Those crescent cuts, not that side. It's this rim right on this side, the one with the solid pieces here. And this bottom ridge actually has brakes in it, and those brakes allow these rails to slide through. So we'll have to make sure that's lined up as well as we try to put this on again. And there we go. It's pretty stiff, and that's okay. We just want to work it all the way up until we can get it to the gears. And slide it over the gears. This is our last chance to check the assembly to make sure everything's lining up correctly, because we want this blade to extend at the same distance that this blade extends at the same time. So this one's already all the way collapsed in. We'll collapse this one all the way in so that they match. And then we'll match up the carriers by aligning the seams. And I'm holding the top of this blade so that when I push it in, it's not going to push it away. I want to hold it in place so that this pentagon can actually connect Okay. And then just by kind of twisting by hand, I'll make sure that this blade is extended at the same distance that this blade is extended, which it is. So that's good. Now I'll carefully take this back apart, and we want to make sure that we pin it in this orientation so it stays aligned. I did this off camera, but I just put a little dab of hot glue in the hole there and then pinned it with this piece of red filament. Then once that solidifies, I'll trim it all flush and we'll stick it together. All right, I have my filament trimmed, so now this is pinned and those two screws have become one. So I can put the split ring in here and we'll assemble it just like any other blade. Okay, our split ring is back in. And this is our last chance just to double check all the alignment. We want the seam of the carrier on this side and the seam of the carrier on this side to match up. And then the distance here and the distance here to be the same. So we're looking pretty good. And to click this in can be a little bit tricky because there's a lot of force that needs to go on here and there's not a lot to kind of grab onto. Okay, I actually put on the grip piece and this upper piece so that I can have something to push against. So I'll push against here, it'll push against here, it'll push against top of the ring gear, and then it'll actually click in the bottom carrier. Okay, now that's clicked in. Everything still spins. Everything's still lining up. We can put our last two pieces on here and we'll be done. There we go. The dual Twistsaber.